Welcome aboard the cruising show. If you're new here, my name is Ken. I'm here with my wife, Andrea, and you can watch us here on YouTube, on Facebook, or you can listen to us on your favorite podcasting platform, Spotify, Apple, Google, or just head on over to thecruisingshow.com. That'll bring you over to our website. We are going to be sharing with you today the true cost of cruising.
Now, I just think cruising is an amazing bargain. You get an amazing trip.
Mhm.
And I'm so guilty of saying to my friends, though, oh, it's so cheap to cruise. You can cruise for $350 for the week. How can you even afford to stay home? And I think sometimes I might be misleading them a little bit because there is a little bit more to the cost of cruising.
Yeah.
So I still think that cruising is an amazing bargain, but we're going to go over kind of the minimum cost and all the extras that you can do.
Yeah, because there can definitely be a lot of extras, but you can do it on a budget as well.
Absolutely.
So it's we're gonna go over all of that today. I mean, if you're an avid cruiser, you're gonna know a lot of this stuff. But there's a lot of you who have maybe never cruised before, or are thinking about going on a cruise, or have only cruised a couple times, and you want to make a budget. So hopefully what we're going to be talking about today will help you out. Let us know in the chat where you're from. We've got a few people out there today. Welcome, Mike. Welcome, Big G. Welcome aboard. And we enjoy having you on here. If you do comment in there, we will try to bring some of the comments into the show. We can't do it with all of them, but we'll try to bring some of them into the show and bring that into the conversation as well. So again, welcome aboard and thank you for joining us today. Palm Springs, California. Awesome. We were in Palm Springs, Mike, last summer.
In August.
Yes, it was hot. It was really hot. And Sherwood Park, Alberta. Welcome, Bob.
Hi,
Bob. You're not too far from us. We're in Kelowna, British Columbia. So you're I think outside of Edmonton, if I'm not mistaken. So welcome aboard, Bob. So yeah, why don't we just dive right into this, Andrea? I think let me jump over here. We want to start out with the bare bones costs of cruising. So what's the minimum that you can expect to pay? Because there's a lot of expenses, like you said, that you could add on to make it as luxurious as you like.
And we have done the bare bones cruising, and we have had an amazing trip.
Other bare bones, other than flights and the bare minimums, but
true, yeah.
I think our first cruise we went on, we basically did bare bones, other than the the odd souvenir and the flights and transfers, that sort of thing. But it was still one of my favorite trips.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
We'll jump into some of the bare bones costs of cruising. I know you have stuff you want to say.
I have some, yeah. So I did a search online, and I found something that we would find of interest. It was a 7-night cruise to Mexico out of LA. It was $414. So
for an inside cabin.
For an inside cabin. So that is your base fare for the cruise, $414 per person, and that's generally based on 2 people in a cabin. Sometimes the price goes up per person and sometimes down per person, depending if you have more or less.
Yes.
And it can be quite expensive if you're traveling solo.
It can, yes.
It can be. So that is a whole other thing to look into. So you're going to have your cruise fare. And the next thing that you do have to pay is the taxes and port fees.
Yes.
And those vary depending on where you're going. If you're cruising out of LA and you're going to Cabo, Mazatlan, and Puerto Vallarta, that is a lot less expensive in port fees than it is if you go to Alaska.
Yes. And the other thing I should mention, some cruises will have 4 ports versus 3 or 2 ports. So you are going to be paying a different amount depending on the ports and where those ports are located.
Yes. And then the other thing that is expected is gratuities.
Yeah.
And a lot of the cruise lines will just bill you for the gratuities, and it's automatic.
So often you'll see prepaid gratuities. So you can prepay them as you're kind of what's it called? Not booking, but like you're registering for your cruise ahead of time. You can have that already charged, so you don't have to think about it later. Or if you don't do that, they'll put it on your account on the ship.
So when I was looking at that $414 cruise, it had port fees of $130. Again, this is per person, and gratuities would be $112 per person if you did the automatic what they charge to your account. So you're looking at a bare bones cruise of $656 per person, not $414. And that is not including how to get there. That's having your friend drop you off at the cruise ship.
We all need the friend that drops us off at the cruise ship.
We do, yeah. And that's, that's just getting on the cruise ship. That's nothing else.
Yeah. Well, our last cruise, we just got off the Carnival Vista, and we had an hour and 40-minute Uber ride back to the airport because of construction. But yeah, there can be a lot of transportation costs, or parking, all that kind of stuff. And we'll get into that a little bit more. And yeah, so that would be like the bare bones cost. Do you want to speak a little bit on what gratuities cost?
Yeah. Sorry. Now, they vary depending on your stateroom and the company you're cruising with. So I searched just a few of the companies looking up. Most of them charge between $16 and $25 per person per day.
Yeah.
And they all have slightly different rules. So like with young children and stuff, some are no gratuities expected under 2, some are 3. So you're going to want to go online and read specifically for your cruise. Yeah,
no, for sure. And also I do want to mention that gratuities can depend on the type of cabin you get as well.
Yes. So if you're getting a suite, the price tends to go up per person.
Yeah, versus a basic room. I do want to note here, welcome to Big G is from New Zealand.
Wow. Wow, you're far away. Welcome.
You're far away. And then Bob is mentioning this is so basically he's saying that the cheapest fare from Edmonton is out of LA, and we found for our end of where we're at as well in British Columbia, going to LA and cruising out of there can be very affordable just because it's easy to get there. And again, most of them go to Mexico, and the port fees are low. So that's a kind of a good point there. So any other thoughts on all of this, the bare bones costs?
No, I just think you can have a great cruise. I see though that Big G has a question here.
Sure. So what about last minute bookings just before the sailing? 4 for the price of 2. We were going to talk about deals later a little bit, but you are right. So we did the Carnival Panorama last August with our son, and those can be some of the best deals. So we had to pay for 2 fares, and then our son was $1. But the gratuities and port fees, we still had to pay for him. Yeah. So the cruise fare was $1, but you still paid for gratuities and that. And the same thing when we sailed with all of our kids on MSC. The same thing. There was discounted rates and kids sail free and different things like that. And there's still gratuities. There's still all those costs as well.
But the last minute cruise deals can be really good. I work for the school district, so I'm very limited to a school calendar at this time, and that makes it more tricky to pick last minute deals. But some of the best deals, like especially if you can go in the off season, incredible if you can go last minute.
Yes, for sure. So yeah, I think for the bare bones costs, I think they're pretty straightforward. One thing I do want to mention, and I'm not sure if Big G knows this, I know in Australia, I believe gratuities can be included in the fare, and I'm not sure if that's the case in New Zealand as well. But
it's a different structure.
It's a different structure there for sure. So why don't we jump into our next category? And this is where a lot of the extra costs can come in. So we've got a few different categories. This one is onboard costs and extras. And I think, do you want to start out with internet?
I do.
Because internet, we all have our busy lives. We try to limit how much internet we buy.
We do. And this is a tricky one because I do like to be connected to home, and it's not just streaming the internet or for fun. Internet, though, can get very expensive and isn't always the best internet service that you expect when you're at home, let's say, like,
Yeah.
and often it
It
leads
can-
to a lot of frustration because people pay big money, and depending where you're at, the reception just isn't very good at times.
Yeah.
But let's like talk about the cost. And one thing I do notice, if you do pre-purchase your internet, it tends to be less expensive. Some of the companies run 10% off, some of them run 20% off.
Yeah.
They may have different internet packages where you can just pay for 24 hours, but those tend to run you a fair bit more. But for instance, I saw one cruise line was offering $20 to about $28 per day, depending on the speed, whereas NCL, a Norwegian, was running between $29 and $39 per day as an add-on.
And one thing I noticed when we were on the Vista a couple of weeks ago, the costs to buy it on the ship for the day were more expensive than if you pre-purchased it before you went.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to think about as well. Now, we will commonly just buy it for a couple of days on the ship, maybe a sea day, that sort of thing. When we've gone to Alaska, because we'll have a data package with our cell phones and you're in port for 3 days and or even 4 days, or in Canada, so you might stop in Victoria, you might already have access to the internet off the ship for 3 or 4 days. So I don't think we find it worthwhile for ourselves then to buy a full week package. We might buy it for a day or two during that trip. Yeah.
The thing too, I should say, is that isn't per cabin. That is allowing one device in most cases to log in, or
for one person.
Yeah, but you can often log out and then, like someone else in your cabin, log in, but you can't simultaneously run 2 devices. Some packages do, though.
Yes. Yeah.
But
some will allow you more devices or different things like that. So internet can definitely add up.
For sure.
Different things, of course, everybody likes to have some fun on the ship. And there's different things like beverages, for example, pubs or different things like that. Now, this can definitely get pricey.
Yeah, no, the cruise line does provide you with beverages. So if you've never cruised before, you go to breakfast, most of them will have coffee, tea, orange juice, maybe a couple other kind of juices, depending on the cruise line, that are inclusive. And then usually at lunchtime, it is either like an iced tea, lemonade, or some kind of flavored water.
Flavored waters. Then there's, coffees and teas and hot chocolate commonly you'll see as complimentary on the ship. Often you'll have to go to the buffet or a small little kind of complimentary restaurant to get that. You might see little kiosks around the ship.
But in the main dining rooms, often you can ask, and you may or may not be able to get things like iced tea or lemonade. But all those other beverages that they advertise,
sodas, drinks, beer, all the frilly drinks. they cost money.
Yeah. And so they do try to sell you beverage packages.
Okay, yeah.
And you can purchase your beverages individually, one at a time, or you can buy a drink package. But it can be pretty pricey, and they can add quite a bit to your cruise.
So do you want to speak? I know a lot of the drinks are between $10 and $15 US. But of course, the sky's the limit depending on what you're getting. But that would be like a common price on a ship. But I know weekly plans, and keep in mind, typically everyone in the cabin
over the age of 21
would have to buy a beverage package.
If one person does. Yeah. So, for example, I was looking at Carnival. And their drink package currently is $59.95 a day per person, plus 18% gratuity. So on a 7-night cruise, that would come to $495
per person.
Per person.
Yeah. So your $440 cruise, just $414 cruise, just more than doubled in price if you wanted that package.
Yes. And that is, if you like your beverages, that is the way to go. They also have soda packages on the cruise line. So if you want non-alcoholic, I know Royal Caribbean has a middle of the line package that is non-alcoholic, but includes like mocktails and that sort of thing. But the drink package and drinks can add up. You know what? We have seen soda, like cans,
Well,
vary from what, like $2 to $3?
it's usually
each?
$2 to $3. I know when we were on Princess last summer, it was, I think this was to Alaska on the Discovery Princess. Soda in a glass, I believe, was $1.50, and the prices could have gone up. And a can was $2 plus gratuity.
Yeah.
But I believe it was $3 a can for soda on Carnival.
And we looked at the soda package, and for us, we were looking at it, and I like to have a soda once in a while, but in order to justify it, I was going to have soda, at least 3 cans of soda every day to break even, or I could just buy them individually. So we opted to buy them individually on that cruise.
Yeah. The other thing is, and if you are trying to sail on a budget, a lot of the cruise lines will allow you to bring 12-pack of non-alcoholic cans onto the ship. So double check that. I know you'll see, especially on Carnival and Royal Caribbean, you'll see people walking in with a case of Pepsi or whatever.
It does have to be in your carry-on. You can't put it in your
suitcase.
Yeah. And you do need to check, because there are like size. They can't be oversized cans or anything. So they all have their own rules.
One thing I just want to bring back up on the internet, Bob here is saying for platinum level, it's $10 a day for 10 days. Which is a great deal. So if you have status with a cruise company, they'll often give you bonuses where you can get discounts. So
that's great to know. Thank you, Bob.
That's good to know. All right. So I think we'll kind of move on to the next part of that, which I think similar thing is specialty restaurants. So I can't think of a ship that doesn't have specialty restaurants. Maybe some from like the 80s, if there's any of those around. But ships will have several areas where you can go to specialty restaurants, and there are commonly things like Emerald's Bistro, or I mean, almost every ship probably has a steakhouse on it.
Yep.
Like Carnival, commonly you'll see Fahrenheit 555 Steakhouse, but there's I fumble on this one. Cucina del Capitano,
Italian
restaurants. There's
usually Asian, like sushi, or it could be
bonsai sushi, different things like that. Now I know I'm just listing off Carnival ones, but I can't remember some of the names on the other ones. So those are costs, and commonly, I mean, steaks are going to be more, but commonly those will start in the $20-$25 range, probably for going to those restaurants. So that's something to think about as well. If you're not wanting to eat in the main dining room, and you're wanting to go to some of the specialty restaurants, that will cost.
Yeah, and then they will add gratuities on top of that too, usually 18 to 20% on top of the fee that they advertise.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yoshi's saying he's shocked that paying $100 internet for a little over a week, he thinks that's a little pricey, and I agree, it is pricey. But
internet on the cruise is very, very, very expensive. That's why we try to like internet detox a little bit on holidays.
Yes. So specialty resturants, and you know what? Some of those restaurants are great. So it's your holiday, do what you like, but it can add up. Spas.
And they have beautiful spas and beautiful spa areas. We like to go take in the spa tour and check out the facilities.
How nice is the hot tub overlooking the water?
It does look nice.
Yeah. Sorry for those of you on the podcast, but there's a hot tub with its own private window overlooking Galveston.
If you want to feel a little bit better, though, it is in port, so it's more industrial. It's not quite the beautiful view you would get to see.
But there's some awesome little spa areas on the ship, but
they're pretty pricey. They're more expensive than you typically would pay at home. At least that I found they're pricey.
But you know what? On our last cruise, I think there were days where
they ran specials.
Well, you could tell they were quiet.
Yeah. At
times, because they would come on, the cruise director would come on and say, "Hey, we have 10 spots open at this discounted price for a massage. The first 10 people can get it." but they're now. Basically, they're in the next 2 hours for the.
Well, and they also, what's really nice, especially if we were going on an Alaskan cruise,
Yeah.
is they have the therapy. What do they call it? They call it the like on Princess, it was the Enclave. They have their spa, their thermal suite.
Thermal
area.
suite. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it has their, their hydrotherapy pool. They have those, they're like tiled loungers that are heated.
Yeah.
So if you're somewhere,
saunas and.
I don't know that in the Caribbean I would enjoy that because I'm already like warming up. But if you're in Alaska, that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
That would be really nice. So, and some of those are included if you pay for like a spa cabin,
Yeah,
or you buy a pass for the week or whatever they have. They
Yeah.
would be nice.
No, for sure. And some of those things, like even on Carnival, they have the Havana cabins that get you the private Havana
Area.
pools and
Yeah.
And hot tubs. So depending on the cabin you have, you might get perks as well.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, we've got souvenirs, candy shops.
But there's also high-end souvenirs too, though.
Well, I don't have pictures of high-end souvenirs, but I have
No.
pictures of hats for $20.
That's not bad. But you often they have designer purses and perfume.
Well, that's just it. If you haven't been on a cruise lately, there are a lot of like jewelry stores, watches. They sell a lot of that stuff on there, and we're not talking like low end stuff. A lot of high end purses and things.
A lot of they want to sell to you, and then they also have a more affordable things, especially like their logo wear.
Yeah, and that's what I had here was the like Carnival hats and shirts. That was $20 for the combo. So even if you want some souvenirs on the ship, sometimes they can be affordable for sure.
And and some of the cruise lines will run clearance sales where they sell things that are from past seasons, or like I've seen $5 t-shirts.
Well, I've seen t-shirts on cruises that aren't even from that cruise.
Okay, I think there was a t-shirt on our last cruise that said Spring Break 2019. So if you're looking for a bargain and you don't mind the wrong year,
that's when you spill everything on you and you just need a shirt.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then so from there, onboard activities.
And I've noticed that the newer, bigger ships have really put in activities or like special features that have an additional cost.
Yes. Roller coasters.
Yes.
That was
and that was $15.
Yeah, that was about a year ago. I did the roller coaster on the Mardi Gras. I don't know if the price is the same still, but I think it was $15 at the time. And I can't remember. It was probably no more than a minute long. It was short.
It was quick.
But you had to book it. It gets busy, and they're moneymakers for the cruise lines. They're fun. Don't get me wrong. But they're definitely.
Well, especially if you're traveling with kids and they see these things, they're gonna want to go on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
So it's good to know ahead of time.
But it's kind of I don't want to call it a once in a lifetime experience, but how many people get to ride a roller coaster on a cruise ship?
That's true.
So like stuff like that, I find worth it.
Yeah.
More than other things personally. Anyway. Yeah. Go-karts.
That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Norwegian really likes their go-karts.
I believe they have that on the Bliss. This was on the Norwegian Joy in Alaska.
And the training price, was that like 15 or 25 roughly?
I think it was somewhere $15 to $20. And that was a few years ago.
Yeah.
So I think the Bliss, the Joy, and another one has it, I believe. So so you might be able to see things like that, as well as IMAX theaters. There was an IMAX theater on the Carnival Vista, which actually I would say we went and saw an IMAX film in 3D, and so it wasn't the like a normal movie. They did show normal movies in there as well, and that was I think around $16 or $18. We saw an IMAX film, so the kind of the 45-minute made for IMAX for 3D, and I believe that was only $8.
Just under $8.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful theater. Like it was, I actually think at least as nice as our theaters here at home.
Yeah, it was big. The seats kind of reclined back. So yeah, I enjoyed that. When we say some stuff was expensive, I actually walked out of there saying that was $8. That was a good deal. because I think that was cheaper to go to IMAX on the ship
than here
than-
on land.
than here in land. Yeah. So some interesting things you can do. And I mean, there's more than what we're saying here today, but there's really cool stuff that you can run into on ships. And of course, for the kids, there's arcades or VR arcades you might see. This is just a regular arcade, but you'll see VR arcades where there's like driving simulations or walking tight ropes with goggles on, all that kind of stuff on the ships. And those are not free.
Those are not included. I'd actually recommend, if you are traveling with kids, make sure that there's a limit set up on their room key, because you just pay with your room key. Unless you don't care, you could be in for a real surprise at the end of your week.
Yeah. No, it can,
because that room key has a lot of power.
Well, even I remember I went and did the claw thing. I can't remember what it was, $3-4 or whatever. But it lasted like 15 seconds. I'm like, oh, that was fast.
And we were cruising with our son, and he was like, try it again, Dad, try it again. So
like, yeah, you can burn through money fast in the arcade. So and yeah, I think that's, there's so many more kind of activities on board. So there's a few other ones I noted. Royal Caribbean has things like the North Star, which might be free, and then certain times, if it's in a special location, they might charge. So it's like an arm that you go up high in the sky. They'll
do an extended one too that you can pay for.
Yeah.
So there's free like trips, and then there's upgraded.
Yeah. So there's different things like that. What else do I have listed here? Of course, gambling. If you're into like the casinos, bingo is popular on the ships. A lot of people play bingo, and fundraisers.
Well, yeah.
And I really like the fundraisers. Carnival does their Groove for St. Jude, which is a fundraiser for the Children's Hospital, I believe.
Right, yeah.
So there's those sorts of things. And then
I was thinking, there was one more though. When we were on Carnival, there was Deal or No Deal, which is like a big game. And if you want to be like actually playing along, you have to buy a card.
Yeah.
Now you can go and just watch for free, but if you want the chance of winning money, you do have to pay to enter.
Yes. And maybe that's why the cruise is $414 that you selected, because they want you to buy all the extras.
Yeah.
So that's how they get you on there. Well, some people don't even pay for their cruise.
That's true.
If you're an avid gambler, they will commonly offer you free cruises. So just because they know.
But we're not saying to go out and gamble and you'll get a free cruise. Even some of the casinos, people on land, people have been offered free cruises. But I'm not sure if they pay port fees and stuff. I don't know.
I'm not sure how that works, but because they know that they, on average, will make money off of giving people free cruises. So that's something. If you are a gambler, look into that. You might get a free cruise. The other area that we wanted to talk about was private areas on the ship. So there's a few of these. Like on Princess, they had the Sanctuary.
Yes.
Kind of private cabanas and hot tubs and stuff, but you did have to pay to get in there as well.
I wanted to just touch them when you talk about the private areas and exclusive. Some of them on some cruises, I believe, would be really worth it, especially if you're can afford to do the upgrade and it's spring break, let's say, when the ship is really full. You might really enjoy having a less crowded space. But I also want to just there was a question there about the day. Yeah. You can go back. Opinion on day passes. Is it worth it? And when do you use it? So we haven't purchased a day pass or used the spa pass. I personally don't think I would enjoy it in hot weather.
First of all, you have a group benefits package, so we get massages and things like that.
But that's not included in the spa pass.
No, I get it, but so some of that stuff we have access to at home for the spa. But you're right about the spa passes for the bubbly tub. I don't know what it's called.
I actually think what I would. Because I think they actually look really nice sitting on those benches, and I would like the hydrotherapy pool. I think if I was going to do it though, what I would do is look for when they have a sale in their spa cabins that includes it, because sometimes the price difference to upgrade to the spa cabin can be like just over 100 or a little bit more
Yeah.
for that upgrade. And then I think it's totally worth it.
Yeah. Those heated chairs are nice. I think I'd really enjoy the saunas and that sort of thing. So,
but I personally would need it in colder weather.
Yes.
I get a little too warm with the Caribbean as it is. I'm more for
Alaska.
Alaska, absolutely. That's when I would use it.
So let's jump over to our next category here. It was excursions and port costs, because there can be a lot of fees to add on for that sort of thing as well.
And if we talk about that cruise, one of our first cruises we did, we just got off in port and walked around and explored the city, and we had a great time.
I like to explore, hence the name Northern Viking Explorer. I like to walk around cities, even in our own town. I like to go for drives, find new streets that I haven't seen before. I like to explore. So just walking around a new place is extremely enjoyable for me. Some of you might hate that. So an excursion might be what you want to do. But I think about going to, we went to San Juan last year, Puerto Rico, and I was enamored by just walking around the city, walking on the cobblestone streets. And yet we did go into the forts and the castles that you had to pay to go into at minimal cost. That was probably one of, if not my top favorite ports ever. And we didn't really do an excursion other than paying $10, $15 to go into the fort.
And the one pass got us into the
other fort.
And it was very inexpensive day. And we were able just to walk the short walk each way.
Yeah. I guess one thing I do want to mention is, so for me personally, let's take zip lining, for example. I like going on a zip line, but within half an hour of our house, we have 3 zip line courses. So if I go to a country across the world, I would rather see what the city and culture is like than go ziplining. Ziplining's fun, don't get me wrong, but I can do that at home. I'd rather see.
And same with like things like ATVs. We live really close to the forest.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in our community have ATVs. So if we want to go ATVing, we can call up a friend and be like, hey, we'll pay your gas. Let's go ATVing for the day. And so those kind of things influence. But maybe some people love to do high energy things all the time. It's your holiday. Do what you want. But we're saying you can do it inexpensive, or you can spend a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, because some of those excursions are expensive. For example, in Skagway, Alaska, first of all, I want to say that Alaska excursions I found to be more expensive.
Way more expensive. Like when you look at the list the first time, if you're used to cruising to Mexico or the Caribbean, I think your mouth is going to drop.
Yeah.
You'll be in for a surprise. They're not discounted anyway. It's pricey.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so a popular one is riding a train into the mountains. And, those are sometimes a lot of people are going to Alaska for their once in a lifetime bucket list cruise. And, that's awesome. Do the train, do it all, because that's what you're going there for. But those excursions can be more. I think the train was more expensive than we paid to go on the Discovery Princess. And keep in mind, there was a lot of
not quite,
but close to it.
Yeah,
there was a lot of deals the last couple of years in cruising.
We got an amazing deal when we went.
but there's definitely some cost to these excursions. There's things like you can do zip lining. This is in Amber Cove, so you can do that kind of stuff. There's costs for that. And they're endless. You can do scuba. You can learn to scuba, or if you're experienced, you can do something more aggressive. But there's so many things that you can dive into that way. And you can. I want to say you can go as expensive as you want, because it's not cheap to take a helicopter to a glacier and go with dog sleds and that kind of stuff. Like there's some expensive excursions, but
those are dream bucket list items.
Yeah,
like you can do really crazy fun things in port.
Yes, but you can also keep it modest and walk around the city and explore ports. Or
our last cruise, we were in Cozumel, and we walked down to a restaurant which I knew had access to snorkeling, and we had a great day, and it was very inexpensive, but people had also paid for an excursion
So
to the same
that's
spot.
actually, if you're watching on the stream, that's actually where this is right now. So the people swimming and snorkeling there, many of them had paid to come there with an excursion, and we walked there and had a similar excursion. We were snorkeling, they were scuba diving, but there were snorkelers as
There
well.
was snorkeling,
But
yeah.
we were snorkeling in the exact same area that people were scuba diving,
Yes.
like right up 5 feet above them. So it's, you know, you can. I think that's where it comes back to when you said, I believe you said earlier, do your research.
Absolutely.
Before
Do your
you go.
research, and you want to know, number one, should say, you want to know your safety.
Yes.
Can you get off in port safely and walk around in that area? You want to know transportation, because some of these ports are not in the middle of the city,
Mhm.
and you're far from. You should know ahead of time, because you'll cut your stress down.
Yeah. I've talked to people who have been angry in the past that they paid for an expensive excursion and then they just ended up at the exact same place that people walked to or took a bus to or a taxi and paid a quarter of the price or a tenth of the price, because they just
You know, and that's a whole nother podcast
It
we could
is,
talk
yeah.
about, because the whole debate of booking with the cruise line or doing privately,
Yeah.
we could devote a lot of time.
Yeah, for sure. So
A lot of time for that.
So yeah, there's all those excursions. The other thing is there's a lot of private, I don't want to call them private beaches, but private stops. So for example, Amber Cove, you've got, so if you haven't been to the Amber Cove before, that is in Dominican Republic. It's a private stop owned by Carnival, so it's Carnival ships, or I think you'll see Holland America there, and probably Princess as well. So it's a private shopping area, private pools, private that sort of thing. You might not see other ones. Perfect Day at Coco Cay or Castaway Cay. There's a whole bunch of them. Most of the cruise lines have private beaches or private islands or private resorts, and there's more of them being built. So I personally like these stops.
I do too, and the beach access is commonly free with free loungers.
If they have a beach, like Amber Cove, for example, has pools,
yeah,
that are free to go
like
to.
Grand Turk was a beach,
and
they had loungers that were included. And you could have a gorgeous beach day, and you're right. You get off the ship, you're right there.
Now, was Grand Turk a Carnival stop? I can't remember.
We were on the Mardi Gras.
So regardless, there was a private beach there. But it's free to go there, but then there's costs while you're there.
Yes, it can be costs.
There can be costs. Yes. So you can do it for free, but things, if you want to rent cabanas, that's going to cost you. Things like kayaking or stand-up paddle boards, jet skis, massages, those little fish that eat your feet in the little pools, chairlifts. And you say chairlifts, what's that?
Mahogany
Bay has a transportation chairlift.
Because it's a walk over to the beach. So they put in a chairlift that can take you there. So which is really important if walking is difficult for you. But then there is a fee to it.
Yes. So but they're good if you want to take a break. The other one I actually found I enjoyed was a rickshaw.
Yes, we did that one time. Where did we do that?
We did that actually here in Amber Cove.
Okay.
They're little rickshaws. So they are free to use, but they work for tips. So tips are expected.
So you're going to need to carry cash.
Yes. So, all those things in these spots, like the private beaches, of course, some of them will have complimentary eating areas, little buffets and things. But bars, you're going to be paying for those. You're going to be paying. There's restaurants. There's all sorts of stuff. So if commonly, you'll have to be paying for food at those ports as well. And
when we were in Amber Cove, I stopped and I looked at some of the prices, and I thought it was actually pretty pricey. I think I recall like hamburgers were over like $15-16. It wasn't like discounted.
Yeah, no, for sure. First of all, I want to say Tina Girl Travels, you love the fish pedicure. Yes. Yeah, well, I haven't tried that yet, but
I think you should next time.
Yeah, maybe
I'd like it. Ken has I think he'd just squirm the whole time. I don't know that you could handle it.
So Amber Cove, though, so cost, here's a good example. So kayaks for up to 2 people. Sorry, the photo's a little blurry there. $20 for half an hour, 35 for a full hour. So solar catamaran, zip lines. Even they'll charge for umbrellas there, pool floats for the day, lockers, etc. So Wi-Fi. So all those things can add up.
Actually, the Wi-Fi, if you're not getting it on the ship, is reasonable.
Yes, it's commonly it's cheaper to
use the Wi-Fi there.
We also use an eSIM, like a secondary SIM in our phone. So if we want to get data in Mexico or wherever, we can do that as well through a private eSIM. So yeah, so that's kind of the different things at the private stops. We did want to talk about a couple things. Transportation in the ports.
Yes.
So taxis, we like to take the bus sometimes if we're a little adventurous.
It's fun.
Yeah. Shuttles, that kind of stuff. So those are things to keep in mind. Example, Mazatlan, if you want to go to the Golden Zone, you'll need to take a taxi. Well, we've walked it once, but
it's a long walk.
We took really a taxi back.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things can definitely add to the cost as well. And if you're a bigger group, you might need a bigger taxi. Or if you're going to, say you're going to a private resort, maybe you're going to Mr. Sancho's and Cozumel, something like that, you have to find a transportation to get there. And
sometimes they charge per person and sometimes it's per taxi. Highly recommend taking a picture in the port of the set fees.
Yes. Usually, commonly, they will have set prices and it'll be posted in the port.
And we've had to refer back to the set prices when negotiating with taxis.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they like to inflate the price.
Yes. So it'll all of a sudden they're telling you a price that's double or triple, and it's like, well, it's supposed to be this much, and then they're like, oh, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
So it's good to have a photo of it. So the other thing I wanted to mention is some excursions, though, will and this kind of goes back to where we were, may or may not include food. So usually, I shouldn't say usually, depends on the excursion, but you know, for example, we just went cave tubing and that in Belize, and that did include kind of a chicken and rice lunch.
No beverage, though.
No beverage. But that's something to keep in mind. So I know we already talked about that for the private stops. And the other thing we wanted to talk about is entertainers working for tips.
Yes.
So you'll commonly see,
and I don't know if we have a picture up, and I don't know if I would call these entertainers, but they are performing a traditional.
Yeah, I think it's, I can't remember what it's called.
The flying Flordes, or we had a.
Anyway, they do like a musical act while swinging down, but they do expect tips.
They do expect, or you could call it donations.
Donations. People will walk around before they start looking for tips. You'll see people with iguanas or parrots or monkeys or whatever, and they will want to, if you hold that, they'll expect a tip for that. Cliff jumpers.
Yeah, especially if you're taking a photo with anybody, they're expecting something in return for that opportunity.
Yeah. Any other thoughts? I know you kind of wanted to say what that cruise would cost now with all your extras.
Well, I was just looking at that $414 cruise, and you could very easily, instead of, going on foot and having an inexpensive day where you just spend modestly, you might decide, though, there's things you really want to do because now you've seen the presentation on the ship and they're talking about these cool things. And you're like, oh, I want to swim with the dolphins. So booking on the cruise line could cost you $165 to swim with the dolphins per person. And then you're like, in Mazatlan, let's go for that all-inclusive beach day.
Yeah.
So that's your drinks and your food. That's another $100 per person. And in Puerto Vallarta, you've heard all about Rhythm of the Nights. That is $165. So each, you would be looking at $430 to add on to your $414 cruise.
So what's the grand total?
Grand total would be roughly $1,820 per person if you Oh, you know what? I added on here things that we didn't talk about yet.
Oh,
So ignore that. We'll get back to that. Hold on. We'll
it's
get back to
expensive. Your $411 cruise or whatever it is.
It's growing. It's growing. Because we
growing.
haven't talked about the other costs, Ken.
Oh, okay. Well, we're moving on to the other costs right now.
Yeah.
So-
But anyway, yeah, the excursions. The excursions alone would cost you about $430 per person.
So with a family of 4, that definitely adds up.
Well, and your kids are going to want to swim with the dolphins.
Yes.
So
Our poor kids have never swum with the dolphins.
no, I know.
They swam with the fish in the lake, but that's
Yeah.
Actually, our kids have swam with the stingrays.
Stingrays, and they love that.
Yeah, but there was no dolphins.
I think we felt a little stressed though when you have 3 children in the lake or the ocean swimming, where you've heard of you had talked to someone recently that their trip was canceled because sharks came in.
Yeah, they had gone to swim with the stingrays, and it got canceled because the sharks had been around. That was in Grand Cayman.
So we didn't tell our kids about this. So we're out there with them, and you got 3 kids, and there's only 2 of you. So you spend the whole time like.
But it
1,
wasn't.
2,
It was
3,
wasn't
1, 2.
deep. It was only kind of chest deep, but.
But you feel like a lifeguard, even though we're not lifeguards.
Regardless, so pre and post cruise costs. So we'll go through this one pretty quickly.
Because you know what? Some people live right by the cruise and they can port and they can get dropped off. And that they can do minimum and there's no other cost. That's
for us, for example, Vancouver is a port for Alaska. It's not that far. We can, if we could have family drop us
I
off
could
at
have
the
family
train
drop us off
and just ride the train down there. So
or they could drive us into Vancouver.
It's only an hour. Yeah.
But often you don't want to inconvenience families, so there are extra costs.
Yes. So let's start out insurance.
Insurance. So I have a medical plan through my work, so I could be like, oh, I'm good, let's go. But for us, I don't want to risk something happening abroad. You want to make sure that you are covered if you fell, if you got hurt, if you had an emergency of some kind.
And there was multiple evacuations of people or taking people off of the ship or things that happened in port on our last cruise.
Yeah.
So we actually had to meet up with a boat outside of not Cozumel, but Cancun. We kind of went close to shore, and then the boat met us and took someone off. And hopefully everyone's okay. But those sorts of situations happen.
Sometimes some people have gotten classic pneumonia and then needed to be hospitalized, and you want to make sure that this doesn't really hurt you long term. You want to be protected.
And not only medical wise, but also trip cancellation for flights or for, I don't know, something happens and you aren't able to go last minute or different things like that. So insurance is important. Passports and visas.
Yeah, and okay, so we are Canadians, so we have passports when we travel, which is easy. It is better to have a passport even if you don't need one, because if you do get sick or get removed from the ship, something happens, it is definitely easier to get back home with a passport.
Yeah.
But even I wanted to say, before you see like a crazy good deal somewhere further away, check and see if there's visas required.
Yeah, because commonly like Middle Eastern cruises and Asia, we may need visas for each of the port stops or some of the port stops. So that's something to think about. And those can add up in price as well.
Price and take time to process. So you're going to want to research that and know before you pay for your cruise. Know what you're getting into.
Parking.
This is that unexpected cost. And I actually priced
it's not cheap.
No, and I priced it out. For example, in LA, it was roughly the same cost to round trip shuttle to the cruise port as it was to pay for a week of cruising. So for 2 people, shuttling back and forth was about the same as. And these parking, the cities vary greatly.
Yeah.
And I saw some ports are around $20 a night. And I believe Manhattan is $45 a night.
I know in Vancouver I think we were just gone for 11 nights. And that was, I think, around $170 Canadian. So maybe 130, 140. I know Seattle, we commonly, if we search and scour the deals, we commonly get kind of between 10 and 15, but $20 a night would be more
In
normal
Seattle.
in Seattle.
But if you're
at
actually,
SeaTac.
that's parking at SeaTac. If you actually park though at the cruise port,
Oh yeah,
it is much more expensive.
Yeah, I believe it's $179 we just paid to park
for a week,
but pre-booked for Alaska. So
It's
in
like-
Seattle, yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes you get that really good deal, and then you like pay for parking. You're like, that was half the price of my cruise fare. How is that possible?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
parking is definitely something. So if you have a friend that can drop you off, that's even better. Tipping porters,
Mhm.
it's expected. Well, it's one of those things. They take your bags. It's kind of expected, I
Yeah.
think. So treat the staff well, and they typically treat you well as well. So that's one. Flights can be expensive
Yeah.
for sure. So we are always searching for a deal on flights, but that's something to keep in mind.
Mhm.
Hotels pre and post cruise, of course, everywhere from 100 to $150 to sky's the limit, $500.
And some places, like for instance, Galveston, is quite expensive in comparison
Mhm.
to just staying outside of Houston. The price goes up significantly.
Yeah.
But if you stay, 20 minutes away, it was.
Yeah, on our last one, we didn't stay in Galveston. We stayed about 15 minutes outside of Galveston, and we had a rental car, and it was probably half the price.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Galveston is a lovely place to stay.
we drove to Galveston, and the one thing is we couldn't get a car rental that we could drop off in Galveston for some reason. So we would have had to go back out anyway. So those are things to keep in mind. And then transportation, again, car rentals, Uber, shuttles, taxis, etc., to and from the port. If you're flying in, I know, like I said, we just did an hour and 40-minute Uber, and
that I was a little stressed because when we got off the ship, the price was really high for the Uber.
Well, we checked our pricing on the Uber before we went, kind of did a mock booking, and we thought it was going to be about $90 roughly, and we got off the ship because we needed to take it to IAH, and there was traffic, and all of a sudden the prices were $250 on Uber, and Lyft was over $400, and we're like, oh, that's expensive.
I was like, oh, we should have just booked the shuttle.
I was
feeling like, oh, what have we done?
So because that was going to be about, I think, $60 roughly a person, and then we just kind of hung out and waited for about half an hour, and all of a sudden it dropped down to $90, and Lyft was still at that point over $200. So it came back to what we expected. So if you are taking Uber or Lyft, just keep in mind that the prices do fluctuate on how busy it is. So something. And then of course, pre and post cruise food as well. So in the airports and everything like that, that can all add up. All right. Do you want to go over your total cost for your cruise with all the excursions?
So with the basic fares that you have to pay in fees and doing the excursions and some basic add-ons. So I looked at, so LAX was about $70 round trip per person for shuttle. If you did the middle of the line internet package each, you're looking about $119. If you were doing the drink package, that would be an extra $495 per person. And if you went with the insurance, sometimes it starts around $50 per person. And you added on all those excursions on your $414 cruise.
Not including flights.
Not including flights, would be $1,820 per person for your $414 cruise.
So don't be fooled.
But here's the thing. You can do that $414 cruise for $656.
Yeah.
Or you can jump and, you could go way higher than that even.
Yeah.
Way higher. And, everybody has a different budget and whatnot. So when I tell all my friends, it's only $414, it's not the whole story.
Hence why on the last day, there's commonly angry people when they get their bill.
I think it's better now that the cruise companies, they on your app, you can often watch your fees. Mm-hmm. And it's a good thing to check because mistakes do happen. Sometimes they enter room numbers incorrectly. So watch that, but it's better now. People can see the damages
because it's on the app rather than this bill showing up on the
at the end day. So
I remember our first cruise, there was a lot of angry people
on the last
and
day.
that was pre-app.
Yes. And they'll print out each drink that you order.
Yeah.
Like some people have like papers.
And that's great. If you can afford it and that's your holiday, you know, cruise your way, do it the way you want to do it.
Absolutely.
We all have a different budget when we travel, but yeah, it can get pricey for sure. So you can go from cheap to sky's the limit. And yeah, that's really the cost of cruising. So Andrea, did you have any final thoughts? And if there's any quick questions, I know we've gone on for a long time here. So
oh, I think cruising is a great way to have a vacation. I think it is a wonderful way where you can have amazing meals, great entertainment, see amazing places, and get to sample so many different cultures. It is, but you can do it on a small budget or you can do it on a large budget. It is, I think it's an amazing, fun holiday.
Yes. So I kind of hope that for those of you who haven't cruised before or kind of thinking about cruising, or maybe have only cruised a couple times, this episode of the Cruising Show was able to help you out and just kind of help you understand what the costs of cruising are, because it's a little complicated to say in, you know, a 2-minute conversation. So hopefully this helped some of you out. I'm not seeing any questions there, so I think we're gonna just end it there. We've gone on for a long time today. Yeah. So again, this has been the Cruising Show here on Northern Viking Explorer. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, or follow us. And yeah, we hope to have more of these episodes coming up. You can watch us here on YouTube and Facebook, or listen to us again on your favorite podcasting platform. Thanks again for everyone for joining us. And until next time, have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye-bye.